Hi everyone, welcome to the fourth episode of Coffee Pe Charcha, and it gives me immense pleasure to welcome on this episode our guest Abhishek Taneja, a dear friend and an ex-colleague. And Abhishek is the founder of Earth Just Ecosystems, which is supporting and furthering the cause of sustainable living. Um, in the course of next few minutes, we will try and understand from Abhishek what does sustainable living mean, uh, not from a theoretical standpoint, but more from a practitioner standpoint, because Abhishek is not just a practitioner of sustainable living or zero waste at an individual level, but also runs a lot of workshops and a lot of sessions which helps people understand how do we make sustainable living an integral part of our lives. And we believe that it was just the right time as we are closing out the World Environment Week. Uh, we believe that it will be good to have someone who can give us, the so-called nuggets of wisdom in terms of what does sustainable living mean. Abhishek has been in this for almost a decade. Quite some time back, he quit his corporate job and took this path, or so to say, the road less traveled, and took to the social sector and sustainable living. So, thank you, Abhishek, for being a part of this. And tell us, what does sustainable living mean? Define sustainable living for us.
Very simple, conscious consumerism. That's it. It's conscious consumerism. Uh, if you go to the Maslow's hierarchy of need, there were various hierarchies of needs that were defined. I'm not going to define what is consumerism. It's a very individualistic journey. But if I were to define it, it's conscious consumerism in two words. That's sustainable living.
Oh, interesting. I mean, while broadly I understand what it means, but can you just help us? Can you explain a little bit more on what you mean by conscious consumerism?
Uh, so I'll start with the point of origin, the anthropological origin of Homo sapiens. So on this planet, there are not just 7 billion humans, but a lot of animals and plants, living beings, which consume resources, right? Uh, but you would never walk into a jungle and say, you know what, this jungle has 1 billion ants and 1 trillion insects, and this jungle is not sustainable. But with only merely 7 billion people in the last 200 years, we are starting to talk about climate change. We're starting to talk about a lot of things which are impacting in terms of the way we consume things, right? So the difference between a normal animal and a human, who's also an animal in the species, is the way we consume, and the resultant output, which is the post-consumption phase, how that impacts, and the pre-consumption, which is the production phase, how is that impacting the ecology, so that it is resulting in faster extinction of animals. The earth has the IPCC has said that the temperature is going to rise by 2.5 degrees, and it's not risen so fast in millions and billions of years of Earth's existence as it has in the last 200 years, the speed of rise of the climate temperature. So there is normal environmental changes that happen, but we have over the last 200 years, due to post our industrial revolution, progressively increased that impact on the environment, which has resulted in the loss of lot of animals, biodiversity. So it is because of the way we consume. So and when I'm using the word consumption, it's not just the moment of consumption, it's the production phase, the consumption point, and the post consumption, which is the waste that we generate, which is there available in the moment you enter or exit any city in this country, or any village or town in this country. So it's about conscious consumerism again, in two
And
words.
now it's much more clear and makes a lot of sense. So, one key things that all of us understand, personally for me, I do understand sustainable living as a concept, right? And uh, uh, and 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 to be honest, there is this uh, you know right intention to actually move in that path. But what we feel, and I believe a lot of us who are possibly not as initiated as you are in terms of sustainable living, how do we really make it a part of the way we live? How does it become integral to us? And so some of the basics we know obviously around plastics and all those things, but beyond that, what else? What is it that we should be doing, and what is it, given that you have been on this side of the table, really not that you have moved to the other side, but you understand the way we live the life in the so-called urban areas, corporate world, knowing the challenges that are at our end, what is it that we can do with minimal effort or the least effort, which can give us the maximum return with respect to sustainability? I'm not asking for shortcuts, but I'm just saying that right now we don't do anything. I mean, is there anything we can do with minimal effort which can help us?
Uh, so yes, so I will not take an advisory role here, but I will probably share some bit of my journey. Maybe you can pull out certain things, as you said, because I've been on a journey myself in this
Sure.
journey. So I'll rather answer it more from my own story, and I leave it upon you guys to please pull out what makes sense to you. Okay. In my journey, at some stage, and this is 2014, that me and Shruti, we really questioned about being consultant, asking things at a very first principle level, uh, in terms of our living, right? And the questions that came is, as animals, which is the lowest denominator, as we may call right now ourselves as, what is the things that we need? We need right air, uh, right food, right health, right water to survive. ठीक है, अच्छी हवा, अच्छा पानी, अच्छा खाना, अच्छी सेहत, right? And the question was, am I getting this in the NCR region? I was staying the last in 2014. I was in NCR. Before that, I was in Bombay. Are we getting that things? Now, the question was, we are not. On all four parameters, no. We're in the most poisonous cities in the world, right? So as a consultant, when I'm walking out and I'm talking to people on taking the right decisions, cognitively, I'm not doing the right thing myself, right? So the question was, what is it that I need to change in my living habits so that at least things which are within my locus of control, what, air pollution to a certain extent, everything to a certain extent is within my locus of control, and collectively in our locus of control. So we decided to move into the journey of changing things in our locus of control for getting अच्छा खाना, अच्छा पानी, अच्छी हवा, अच्छी सेहत, right? And that is the start of our journey. And the first thing we realized is uh, the amount of money we earn to a great extent translates immediately to the amount we are consuming, because we get so engrossed in the process of earning money that we need to burn it equally well to get de-engrossed from it, right? And so the first question we had was, we need to reduce the amount of money that we have, and that will consciously push us in what you call as lower in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And that's again the second part of the journey. And the third part was, when we started doing that, we also started looking at our dustbin. The first part of the journey was looking at a dustbin and realizing that there is so much that we are giving out to somebody with the high moral ground that I have given out to somebody. Now it's his problem to manage, and it's not being managed. Honestly, it's not being managed, right? And so the question again was, agar mera kachra hai, if I have produced it, it is my responsibility to manage it, right? And that is the journey when we started reducing our kachre ka dabba to something that we are not giving out to somebody. If I am producing it, it's my moral responsibility to handle it. And today, after 5 years, I can confidently say for the last 2 years, we have not given even once in the last 2 years, 1.5 years at least, confidently I can say, even 100 grams of kachra out for somebody else to handle it. We've been handling on our own. At least for 4 or 5 days in the month, when my wife was menstruating, we used to have that pad. But fortunately, we've also found natural alternatives to it, and we've gone zero waste, completely zero waste. There is some things that I produce, I manage on my own, and I found uses for it now or later. So that was the third part of the journey. And once we started doing that, we realized there are a lot of people who are around us are wanting to be part of this journey. And that's when we created a legal entity. I would rather call it an idea rather than a legal entity, but we had to create a legal entity, as most of us had to. The idea was to promote sustainable living practices and share our journey. And that is where the concept of this workshop, as you were talking about, started. And we started, uh, sharing our journey. Today, as an organization, we co-think and collaborate with individuals, with households, with institutions, with communities in making them more sustainable in their practices. The idea is that we can create a Swachh, Sundar, Swasth, Saksham, Samrit, Sanyukt, Sakat Samaj. If I were to put it in English, it is basically what are the ramifications of having a sustainable living. So that is what we hope to create now. So that's about it.
Great, very insightful, and it really gives us a lot of things. As you were speaking, I was thinking about the dustbin that we produce at our home, and with the lockdown on, it's my responsibility to put it outside every day, and I'm well aware of what is there in the dustbin, and you know, and it makes me believe that yes, there are ways in which maybe there's a day when I don't have to actually put waste out of my house. I mean, whatever I produce, I manage it and take it to the so-called logical end where it should be environment friendly. Abhishek, I believe there was a conversation we were having where you were talking about, you know, how do you really help the employer organizations and employees? I mean, large part of our time is spent in offices. Obviously, currently there are not many offices, but if you look at it, uh, home and office is pretty much heavily used, or highly frequented places where a lot of waste is produced. We've talked about waste at home. Now, what is it that the employers can do uh, to support sustainability? What is it that employees should be made aware of, and what are some of the things that you share, if you can share some of those today here, in terms of what do you tell those employers, or when you conduct these workshops, what are the key messages that you drive out to those people?
Okay, so this is interesting. So I'll first start not from an employer or employee perspective, but us. So at some level, we are citizens living in cities or towns or villages or whatever. Okay, the word citizen comes from the word city. Okay, so what we need to realize is our actions have a manifestation on the environment in and around us, whether we're in a house or whether we're in an office, right? So as I shared earlier, can we, in the first phase, look about making ourselves more sustainable, more conscious in the way we consume, right? Now, with this thought, when we reach and talk to organizations, we also realize that a lot of organizations right now are wanting to move into a sustainability journey. I mean, it makes sense both as individuals, because uh, the activities of their organizations also impact the environment around them. It also makes sense in terms of the way the corporates are moving. More green businesses are being recognized, funded, supported. Even in a Dow Jones, you have a green index. NASDAQ has a green index. So it makes a lot of sense for organizations to move towards more sustainability practices. And the third, of course, as organizations are also required to give their sustainability reports in their annual reports, right? It's a legal requirement. Now, what we've also realized is when you're working with organizations, the organizations are able to put in the right, you might put the right machinery, the right money, you might put in the right methodologies in place, right? But despite having the infrastructure, which is the money, the man, the machine, material, and money, if the manpower is not motivated enough to go, all these infrastructures are suboptimally utilized, right? So what we bring onto the table with the corporates is, as employers, what we bring is a we walk these journeys with their employees in terms of getting more cognitive, more conscious about their sustainable living. So a conscious employee will always use the conscious machinery and the conscious methodology more optimally to take the organization faster in its sustainability journey. Very simple. As an employer, that is what we prescribe. What also helps is while doing these conversations, holding these spaces, the employer to a certain extent also gets ideas of designing for sustainability. You know, most of the organizations right now design for, to a certain extent, obsolescence, if I were to say that. When I'm saying designing for sustainability, let's take a very simple example. Look at the entire office spaces right now designed in places like Gurgaon. You know, you've got completely closed offices running on air conditioners, people wearing coats and suits in summer months. Just imagine if there is one person having coronavirus. I mean, it will spread because you don't have fresh air walking and moving out, right? So it triggers organizations, and then add to that the amount of harsh chemicals we use to keep the so-called hygiene factor high in these organizations. Now that is this VOCs, volatile organic compounds, benzene, toluene, all there in the air. It may not be visible to us, right? But these are harsh chemicals which are not compliant for our body, not good for our body. But we use them in our desks, on our screen of our computers, in the bathrooms that we use, in a closed door environment. Just imagine the amount of harmful wear we have inside. Stop worrying about what you have outside, right? So organizations then start stepping back and thinking, how can they design and redesign their offices more for a sustainable, healthier environment? Is this environment healthy? It may visibly be clean, but necessarily may not be healthy, right? Yeah. So as an employer, you design for sustainability. As employers, we design along with you, take your employees on a sustainability journey. As employees, you know, you are users of these space for 12 hours in a day, 14 hours in a day. It impacts your health if it is not right. So as individuals, if you move into that sustainability journey, it helps you. Take care. And as employees, if you create the right atmosphere, right pressure points in the organization and support the employers, right, it helps everybody in totality. So as employees, you need to be also realizing that it is in your inherent benefit that your organization is healthier and sustainable, not just in the way it is producing its product, but it's in its entire supply chain and in its entire existence. So is the organization designed for sustainability? So we help work on that model.
Very interesting. I mean, you know, hearing you, I believe a lot of it really boils down to being conscious about and be aware about what are the key things one has to do. And once you're conscious and once you're aware, automatically will start seeing, you will come to know what are the things you need to do, right? There can be so many things. Maybe not using a plastic mineral bottle, but instead going and getting the RO water instead of actually using the plastic bottles. I mean, things like that. I mean, times we just buy a plastic bottle, mineral water bottle, and put it on our tables. But maybe maybe that effort of walking down the aisle and getting the tap water or the RO water is important, right? I mean, there are so many small things that I believe we can do. And I've been seeing you over the last few years, and I've been seeing and following you, and you're kind of making me more aware as to what are the things that one can do in terms of sustainable living. Abhishek, one quick, possibly, one last comment which I want to have from you is, where do you think at a broader level, share your sense of optimism or pessimism, whichever it is, in terms of where we are heading? I mean, the big question is, are we really going to hand over a cleaner, safer, better earth to our kids, or are we on the wrong path, or there is a lot that is which is unanswered, and there are a lot of uncertainties floating around? What's your sense?
So I'm an eternal optimist. See, and I'll tell you why I believe I'm an eternal optimist. There is one reason. There are two facets of human that we need to realize. One, as I said, from a primal level, we're animal. And as animal, the biggest instinct is survival. So we'll do a lot of things for our survival if it comes to the moment of survival, right?
Yep.
We will do that.
Yes.
The
History has proven that. History has proven that. We have survived everything, right?
Try and survive everything, right? The second is, of course, as I said, nobody in this world uh, really gets up and says, you know what, I want to pollute this world, right? So at an intent level, none of us want to live in a polluted city, or we consciously do activities which pollute. But at a very subconscious level, there are very small activities we end up doing because we are so stuck in our habits and practices that we don't realize its ramification. For example, if I have gone zero waste in last 5 years and I'm not giving anything out, just multiply. If there was everybody was practicing that in Delhi, we would just solve the problem of waste in Delhi in what, 2 seconds. You know what? That is 1.5 lakh tons of waste every day that is being generated by the city of Delhi. If Abhishek Kaneja can do it in his flat, if everybody starts doing it, that is zero waste in one day, right? So the solution is lying there right in front of us. You look at the mammoth's size, that is 1.5 lakh tons of a city. Look at into the entire country, that's millions of metric tons of waste. That if one individual can do it, everybody can. So the solution is right in front of us. We're just not getting. Are we doing it because I want to spoil Delhi? No, we're doing it because it's a habit, right? So two things: survival. The second is at an intent level, none of us want to pollute. Okay. Now, having said that, it's going to be very interesting. When it comes to the moment of survival, there are going to be two types of individuals. Now, that is where the interesting journey is going to be. There are going to be people like innovators like Elon Musk, right? Who will talk about, let me go to mine the moon to get green batteries and talk about green planets. And that is human intervention and innovation, so-called human intervention and innovation to find sustainable small island cities or Mars or Moon or whatever they may do it. Those kind of people who will follow out of survival the human intervention kind of activity to find sustainable solutions. And then there are going to be some people like me who are going to be on the polar opposite end of an Elon Musk and say, let's connect more with, let's get in more in harmony with nature. Now, people like me would be facing questions like, are you taking us back to the hunter-gatherer ages? So those are questions that we need to answer. And there are questions that Musks of the world need to answer, that human intervention, if not done in a circular manner, would still be invasive. Like, for example, a battery car may not produce pollution at that point of time, but what happens at the end life of the battery? Where do you get the raw material to produce battery? Are you over mining the moon, over mining the Mars, over mining Africa? What happens when the battery ends? Is it going to result pollution? So that is their challenges in terms of sustainability, and my challenges would be, if you're asking me to connect more in harmony with nature, how can I do that in a city design? Or can we go back to the hunter-gatherer ages? So we will have, but there'll be these interesting kind of people in this world working from a survival mode, because end of the day, as animals, we need to survive, right? So I'm positive that we'll be finding a solution, and we'll have the Musk kind of people or my kind of people in this world, and we'll again have this interesting balance of, and there will be some people like you who will end up balancing people like me and get to that optimal solution which is compliant for all of us.
Interestingly, you mentioned Musk. Obviously, one of his big contributions which people feel is the electric cars. I mean, the Tesla technology is pretty far ahead in terms of for electric cars with respect to any other. And the lot of belief is that will obviously help in reducing the air, improving the air quality. But what I hear from you is that while maybe running that electric car doesn't pollute the air at that point in time, but to produce that electric car, to produce those batteries and to use those chemicals, to use those substances which produce those batteries which are running those cars, have already done the damage to a certain extent. Is that a right understanding?
Absolutely. As I said earlier, conscious consumerism is not at the point of consumption. You need to see the production and an impact, and the post-consumption, which is what will happen at the end life of these cars. What will be their impact, right? So if you look at it in the entire value chain, it's a circular model. I have my reservations in which whether we're really green or not green. because plants can absorb a lot of air. You see a Delhi and you see a Chandigarh. Chandigarh with so many cars is still walkable because there are so many plants and trees absorbing air, absorbing these pollutants coming out from car there in Chandigarh. So mere difference. So I have my point of views which are differential,
But
and I
Abhishek,
also believe absolutely.
that brings me to another question. I mean, and as you're speaking, I'm thinking. I mean, while there are a lot of challenges that we people like us have in following what you're saying, right? I mean, it will be it's a journey we have to take, but there will be challenges. And so, this whole concept of conscious consumerism, where whatever you are consuming, it's not just about that moment of consumption, a moment of truth, but also how it came to your hands from that point in time and how it is going to end up after it moves out of your hands. Now, a very practical problem, and it might sound a little funny as well, is that it requires us to be quite knowledgeable. You know what I'm trying to say. That I might be consuming something to eat. I need to know how it came. If I'm driving a car, if I'm using a vacuum cleaner, if I'm using any machine, I have to be a lot more knowledgeable to be able to map out the consumerism part, right? And when you want the entire population to follow that conscious consumerism, you know uh, you and I can possibly do that because we have Google at our hands, but people at large may not be able to do that as easily as we are possibly talking and thinking about it. What's your view on that?
So, as I said, so there are two kinds of population we are talking about. One is uh, economically weak. One is economically well off. If I look from the economic perspective, then there is another set of population, one which is red and one which is unread. Right. Interestingly, the population which does not have too much money cannot really be very high consumers. So they cannot be producers or post consumption. We may have झुग्गी झोपड़ीज जहां पे गंदगी उसके आसपास है, but they are really not the producers of that. They don't have the economic wherewithal to be able to buy packaged chips as much as we buy. They might buy 1 or 2 or 3 times in a month. That's about it, right? They may have the filth around them. Okay. The second side is the educated and non-educated part. Consciously, if I look at it, we are 80% plus educated in terms of population, right? We can say that comfortably, which means we read about this, right? You are, again, I said, in my journey, I am academically a commerce guy right after 10th, and I had nothing. And there is no change, no additional learning that I've done, right? As an individual, I'm equally busy. I'm spending that 10, 12 hours in building an organization and 2 or 3 more. I also have a farm which consumes a lot of my time. It's about being cognitive, and that wisdom lies in all our heads because we're educated, we are economically well off, right? It's just that probably we're not trying to wear that lens of designing or living for sustainability. The moment you want to wear that lens, it becomes very easy. It's there in your mind. Believe me, I have been through that journey. It is not academics. Yeah, I'm asking you to walk your grandmother's journey. Most of these grandmothers have not gone to schools, but they're far more green in their living and their practices than we are. So I'm not talking about an uneducated. I'm talking about your family 2 generations back, of an uneducated grandmother or great grandmother or a great grandfather. They were green in their practices. So it's not about education. It's not about things. It's just about wanting to wear that lens.
Yeah, and very insightful, because what you're essentially saying here is almost like a Pareto thing applicable here, because it's like saying that 80% of the waste is produced by 20% of the top population, which are higher in consumption, have spoiled themselves with the riches and all that. So that's a very powerful point that you have made. So interesting. That perfectly answers what I asked. Abhishek, I mean, it has been a pleasure talking to you, and uh, it's a very very different conversation than the conversations I have on this kind of forum called Coffee with Charcha, which was more to talk about people and HR issues. But I think what we discussed today is as important, because eventually uh, sustainability and environment is also a big factor that affect people, and also affects the workplaces, as you rightly pointed out. So thanks a lot for giving me your time, and i'm I'm soon going to sign up for your workshop that you conduct in Solan, every, I believe it's almost monthly or every quarterly, and it's quarterly. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'll learn more about sustainable living once I'm there. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Nishit. Let's walk this journey together.
Thank you. Bye bye. Take care.
Bye.